It's time to go once more. Welcome to Friday Night Primetime and to the IMSA iRacing Online Sports Car Championship. Over the next 12 weeks, we'll cross around the globe with 3 classes of competition and showcase to you some of the best that iRacing has to offer in its multi-class competition along the way. Arjuna Kankipani on hand with Gordy Much for the very first time in the commentary booth as we make our way through a 45-minute race with qualifying underway right now. And Gordy, it all starts at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. They do this in the real world apparently, but it doesn't mean it's not intimidating even in the virtual world.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredibly tricky circuit. Some really quick corners around here. Moss Corner, which is the very kind of uphill, tight right-hander. So easy to snatch a tyre and lock up there. But yeah, tricky challenge. Based in Ontario in Canada. 3.957 kilometers long. It's going to be a challenge for the drivers tonight, so it's a good place to kick off the series.
And 3 races in 2023 before we flip the calendar over into a new year. And well, it starts with a bang on the streets of Long Beach, but you look at this and of course the IMSA schedule in the real world sees some of the best tracks in North America. We add some of the best tracks in the world. We're going to blast down the Mulsanne to close out this calendar year. Of course, plenty of people, Gordy, are going to be excited about the iRacing Daytona 24. We'll have a bit of a showcase of that action as well halfway through the season. But my personal highlight, we're going to the Nordschleife with these cars, and that's going to be a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard enough to get round the Nordschleife in a Mazda MX-5, let alone a big LMDH cars. I mean, these cars are absolute monsters, and around the Nordschleife, I mean, you've got such little room, so it's going to be really interesting to see later on in the season how the LMDH cars navigate those GT3s. Yeah, I think there might be a few incidents of that, so I'm quite excited to see how that pans out.
Especially given that we've kept the LMP2 class in the mix, and so 3 classes of competition, 4 GTP machines, all 4 of the cars that competed in the 2023 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And in the GTD class, where those GT3 cars take center stage, well, there's 6 options to pick from, and the Audi R8 has been refreshed and revamped, and the Evo 2 has been added to the mix, and it's going to be quite intriguing to see how they all get along in these 3 different races that are taking place out on track. About 13 drivers or so in each of the classes as well. It should be interesting to see how they're divvied up. And Gordy, you were mentioning some of the stats about the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park as we take a look from up above. I mean, it is one of those old school tracks, and it's retained its old school vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of reminds me a bit of tracks like Watkins Glen. You know, it's super fast. It's not changed much since the 1950s when it was built. I think it's a proper driver's track. I mean, these tracks in real life are a real pleasure to drive, especially in these higher downforce cars. Not many heavy braking zones in this track, so it's all high commitment stuff. You know, making sure not to roast the tire. It's going to be an interesting one to hold on to them for 45 minutes.
And while this track has been updated in the real world to add a little bit more paving, we have the lack of paving and therefore the grass that the drivers will have to endure and try and avoid. We're ready to go though for the first time this season, and boys, it's going to be a fun one. 12 rounds in this IMSA iRacing series, crisscrossing across the globe and starting here north of the border, where Jaden Munoz will lead us to the green in that Razor liveried Williams Esports machine. Jere Lehtinen in the Acura will be alongside, and his Acura 1 and 2, it would seem Valentin Boni and Nathan Jew behind them, with Thomas Gibson the first. Shane Larson and Thomas Gibson then behind them. Nathan Jew and Valentin Boni line up in 5th and 6th positions as this accurate domination up towards the front helps when you order your timing screen properly and read off that. Andrea Casson and then Jonathan Skadho will line up on the 4th row of the starting lineup with Julian Retty and then Thomas Gallo 9th and 10th positions. It will be Carter Hutchison in a Porsche 963 alongside Yanni Stefanidis, the second one of the HydroRace geodesic machines in the field. Philip Spencer and then Tim Gray and Matthias Wittgen and then Brian Greener round out the 16 GTPs that will roll. 16 of them, but only 12 of the Spectre Lara LMP2, where Casper Anderson with a 106.453 quickest in class, with Gabriel Ruse alongside Dan Neese, and then Martin de Jong share the second row of the starting formation with Wayne Bork from Down Under alongside Ali Kaglar on the third row of the LMP2 grid. Adam Shipalevsky and then Lionel Mazet, and then Sylvain Moran and Simon Berg round out the top 10 in class, with Ryan Livingston and Jason Anderson 11th and 12th positions. And one of those drivers, no time on the board, fortunately, I don't think is going to have to work his way through the GTD field, because, well, 11 of these drivers are going to be trying to stay out of trouble. And Quirk Tyson Meyer will be fastest of all in that Audi Evo 2. Will be alongside Philip Bereswell, and then Matt Solarchik and Mason Smith in third and fourth positions. Lubyov, Otarevskov-Skaya, Love 46 herself, is alongside Ryan Callan on the third row of the starting formation. Lemmy Mishek, Salvatore De Pompo, Thomas Darabaz, and then Jack Thompson, Lee King McGee round out the 11 cars. And it's back to the roulette wheel of pronunciations with Friday Night Primetime as the drivers roll their way around for what is a full formation lap, Gordy. Plenty of opportunity for them to get themselves set.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, worth a note, mate. I think you've done a good job there on the pronunciations. I was looking at a few of them, and they were a bit challenging. But anyway, yeah, rolling lap now. So qualifying is done, and you know, to be honest, that's one of the most nervy points leading up to the race. Of course, around here with the fast corners and these high downforce cars, it is quite tricky to get close enough to make a move with the kind of dirty air off of the wing. So qualifying is important. So Munoz doing a very good job there. I think Lehtinen will be wanting to try and place a move on him quite early in the race. The earlier the better here.
I'm trying to just keep an eye out for what the sort of deltas we're going to see between the various classes are, because they're all going to go racing at the same time. And this is the LMP2 class, which has just headed out of turn 2, I believe. So they're going to have a long way to go on their race start. The GTDs have just come out of the opening corner, so that's a big old split. And Gordy, it means the first time through traffic is only going to come a handful of laps into this one.
Yeah, especially considering that the track isn't very, very long. We're under about 1:10 here for the LMDHs, so I think by third or fourth lap we're going to already see the first battle of traffic, and that's where you have a massive advantage being in the lead. So Munoz is in the prime spot here. You want to be able to be the first guy through the traffic, to pick and choose where you want to go, because it's always through the traffic where gaps are made, and that can really make or break your race. If you lose the gap, then you have to take more risks.
I think it's going to be a season full of risk, but here north of the border at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, who's willing to lay it all on the line? It's a field dominated by Acuras that streaks their way to the green, and instantly Jaden Munoz is clear at the front and flying through the opening corner. LMP2's yet to even get towards the final sector of the lap, and already side by side, but only for fourth position. One of the GTPs dipped a tire into the grass, somehow stayed out of trouble, and I think you could say the same for the majority of the field, but the GTDs are all on top of one another, and they're not even into the final corner yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at the LMDH. It's got Shane Larson up to P2, so it's not the start that Lehtinen would have wanted. He's already lost a little bit of ground to Munoz. I think Munoz will be very, very happy about that, considering Lehtinen was the closest to him in qualifying. So yeah, it's a good start for Munoz there. Definitely advantage to him. Looks like LMP2 has stayed roughly the same. GTD, everyone's gotten through pretty cleanly. So we've got Munoz in the lead of GTP. LMP2, we've got Casper still in the lead there. And of course, Quirk still leading in GTD.
And so if you look on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll be able to see just how, well, close the field is to seeing traffic be a factor, because the white dots are the GTPs, the green dots are your GTDs, the blues, of course, therefore the LMP2s. No real drama for these drivers in the prototypes. They, for the most part, stayed out of trouble. One driver's taken a tow back to pit lane in the GTD class, though, as they streak their way onto the back straightaway. And I think that was Ryan Callan and Lemmy Mishka that came together. Tyson Meyer building a bit of a breakaway in 3 cars at the front.
Yeah, he seems to be enjoying that new idea at the front. I like that little map in the little corner there. I think I'm going to nickname that the Chaos map, because that's where we're going to see all the squabbling happening before our eyes. I don't think it's going to be too long. You can see in the map already, LMDHs are not far off the back of GTD, so we're in for action, you know, pretty imminently within the next lap or two.
Yeah, quite curiously, for a race start in an IMSA iRacing series race, there hasn't actually been too much chopping and changing. Outside, I think, of some momentum shifts on the opening lap, no one really moving their way on forward, and that's reflected on the left side of the screen with those green and yellow arrows that you can see. You can also see some of those gaps building in the class right now, but no one really able to break away. It's the first time through traffic that's always the most important, because you're all packed up, and as Jaden Munoz is ready to dive down into turn 5 around the outside of 1 GTD, but there's still 10 more left to come.
Yeah, so this is where we're really going to see how the kind of rest of the race pans out here. That first trip through the traffic is always the most important, the start of the race. Obviously everyone's so bunched up. It's when everyone's the closest together. Therefore, it's the hardest to navigate. You've got such little room to work with, and I mean, with these LMDHs, how quick they are compared to the GT3s, it's, you know, they're passing them as if they're standing still. Oh, it's a big move up the inside there. Didn't quite make it work, but looked like he's going to get through there. Almost made it work. I think that would have been a bit risky going up the inside there, but people obviously wanting to make their way through the pack before they get to the GT3 traffic.
And as we just swap at the front, we were watching the battle for 4th and 5th position, but Jaden Munoz has lost out, and through goes Shane Larson. Munoz being very tentative, and advantage taken. I wonder if there was more drama that's led to this, but Larson's already taking a bit of a breakaway, and we're going to cycle back on the replay at some point to see how the lead changed hands. But up the inside of Moss Corner, Larson's making a statement past another one of those Audi R8s.
Yeah, there we have it. You know, everything could change in a blink of an eye. There I was sure that Munoz was going to be running away with this one, but Shane Larson, opportunistic, making the traffic work in his advantage. Get the replay here. Munoz try and make it round the outside, get squeezed onto the grass. Oh, that's a shame. Ferrari going big time into the wall there. Yeah, I think that outside line wasn't really going to work there. Shane just being a bit more patient, it paid off. Got another LMDH in the wall there potentially.
I think it was Valentin Boney that was off the track, and so more drama. The first time through traffic, it is somewhat to be expected, and we're not completely out of trouble just yet, because there are still some of the GTPs that are yet to work their way through the front of the GTD field. Quirk's got to watch around his outside as finally the two Acuras will slide their way on through, but nervy moments for some, and we've only taken a look at one replay. I'm sure there's plenty of other things that have unfolded through this race, and so let's go back and take a look at, on the opening lap, what happened to, well, two of the GTDs, to see one of them down on pit lane.
Wow. Yeah, well, that was certainly a bit of airtime there. I think the Audi turning into an airplane there momentarily. Super lucky that he found a break in the traffic and didn't take anyone else with him. Looks like he kind of just lost it on his own. No one really around him. Not easy. Ooh, bit of a coming together there just with the traffic. I'll take in someone else with him as well. It's tricky with those closing speeds. I think pinched the chap on the outside and the inside a little bit too much. Didn't quite give him enough working room there. Understeered into him, and unfortunately took each other both into a trip into the barrier.
It's those margins that in sim racing we talk not about inches but pixels sometimes, and needing to leave just a little bit of room to allow the racing gods, the iRacing gods as they were, to smile on down on you. So Jaden Munoz, by the way, fortunately, despite all of that drama that we've now seen, doesn't seem to have picked up any damage, and so we're through the traffic. You can look at that chaos map once again, Gordy, in the bottom right corner of the screen. GTPs have a bit of clean air, but not the GTDs for very long, because the LMP2s are closing on them as well.
Yeah, it starts again. I feel bad for the GT3 guys. They're not getting much of a break here, are they? It's always so frustrating, you know. Of course, I've driven LMP2 and GT3, so I've been at kind of both ends of the stick. Sometimes you're looking in the mirror hoping and praying that the faster car doesn't go for a big dive behind but sometimes you have to pick and choose. Do I try and hold the position here, or do I just let them have it? And sometimes that last minute hesitation on that decision is what kind of causes the incidents here. But it's good to see that the top three in GTP are also tight together. As you said, Munoz doesn't seem to have any damage. So game on.
Game on indeed. I think we might have a fight for the lead in LMP2. Dan Nees has passed Gabriel Roos for second, and it's only about 5 cars rather, and maybe in terms of traffic behind. Still got a couple more to work his way on through, as you see the grass that they're kicking up, just really maximizing the entry, and Leaking McGee's on the grass in the BMW. Just about held on to that one. You say you've been on both sides of the equation in terms of traffic, but Gordy, when it comes to being on both sides, doesn't that also help you as well, because you kind of know what each class wants to do, and that's where experience really pays out? Yeah,
just exactly. I think it's nice being able to experience the other drivers' shoes effectively, because you kind of know what they're thinking behind. Because you say, well, why couldn't they have been a bit more patient? And then you hop into the LMP2 and or the LMDH, and you know you're sending it just as hard as what they done, because you know you don't want to be losing time in the LMDH. You don't want to be losing time by getting overtaken in a tricky spot in the GT3. So it's a battle of the two. It's every driver is going to want to lose the least amount of time possible. But unfortunately, there's always kind of winners and losers. Sometimes you need to hold the position, sometimes you just need to give it up. I think in the 45-minute race, you can be a bit more aggressive because you've got a lot less time to work with. But in the longer races, you can afford to kind of just be a bit more patient. But they've not got a lot of time to work with. I know 45 minutes may sound like a lot of time, but it's really not. So in these races, you do need to be quite aggressive to get a good result.
45 minutes is short. Now, we've got the IMSA Esports Global Championship season finale tomorrow as we watch battle top and bottom GTP and GTD once again about to overlap in terms of traffic. But it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Still not a sprint race to you, Gordy? Like, to me it is, even though we call it, it is somewhat of an endurance race.
Yeah, I mean, like when it comes to the big 24-hour races, to put into perspective, you know, that 2-hour race is effectively a single stint in the car for us. And of course, watching over the shoulders of the Apex guys train at the facility and knowing the amount of prep. Ooh, big moment with the Porsche there, getting caught up. Was that Munoz? I think that might have been Munoz.
It's hard to miss when that car gets mixed up in stuff. It's Jack Thompson, the one that's in the wall, though, as a result of it, and now pointed in the wrong direction out of the very fast opening corner. Munoz has lost a bunch of time, and again, just the wrong decision maybe in traffic goes the long way around, and Jari Lehtinen not going to force the issue down in through Moss corner and going to tuck back into line, but there's more drama in traffic for the Williams Esports Razor liveried machine.
That's so tricky, you know. I think there's definitely a little bit of frustration creeping in here because you can see Shane up the roads. Of course, this is the man that put it on pole in quali. He feels, in all fairness to Munoz, don't think he was really involved in that all, just taking evasive action. Looked like the Porsche started losing it before he even managed to get there. Yeah, it's always so frustrating, especially when you've put on pole, you've lost the position as a result of traffic. It was actually the leader that tagged the Porsche. Shane Larson tagged the Porsche. I see.
And so then hard into the wall, and I think Carter Hutcherson got mixed up in that one as well, potentially in a following GTP car. Munoz has been able to close the margin back to Shane Larson. It's these give and takes in traffic because for the first time, Gordy, we've got not one, not two, but 3 classes overlapping at the same time.
Yeah, it's a bit like that kind of science project in school. It's all a bit tame until you add that last ingredient and then the entire thing blows up. I think it's an added element with these LMP2s because of course they're a lot closer to the LMDH in terms of pace, in terms of downforce, and they're so much harder to manage than the GT3s because it's a lot harder to make a move work. And of course, you're suffering more out of dirty air. Arguably, you need to be even more aggressive with the LMP2s because they are harder to overtake because they're closer in pace.
Let's not forget, LMP2s used to be at the speed that the GTPs kind of are at now and had to be slowed down to accommodate them being introduced. As that's a flash of the lights and a slip up the inside by Nathan Zhu as they just carved their way past the first bits of the LMP2 traffic. It's quite curious to see as they continue to battle in and amongst themselves that LMP2 is starting to now get stretched out a little bit. Wayne Bork has just passed Gabriel Roos as well. He's up 2 positions and into a podium spot. 3.5 seconds off the back of Dan Neese with 32 minutes to go. I don't think he's totally out of contention here.
No, absolutely not. He's had a good little race here, kind of recovering his way back up the pack, and still 32 minutes left. In this position here, when you're so close in traffic, of course, you've got the pit stop in this race. At this point, you need to be kind of making that, commitment to what you're going to do on strategy. Are you going to go full push? Are you going to try and do a little bit of lift and coast and try and jump them in the pit stop? So at this point, when stuff starts getting a little bit more spread out, even when the LMDHs come through, you need to start prioritizing the kind of long game in the race. What are you going to do when it comes to fuel? What are you going to do when it comes to the pit stop? So I think between that battle there, it's going to be a bit of a game and strategy as long as traffic doesn't have too much of an influence on it.
Well, traffic's had an influence, unfortunately, on the battle for the lead in the GTDs. Philip Bereswell was chasing down Tyson Meyer, no longer clipped, and I think pretty terminal suspension damage as a result of that. Took a trip back to pit lane, and it looks innocuous, but it's those small little bits of contact that can really do lasting damage.
Yeah, it's a trickier one with that last corner. It's a good opportunity to pop up the insides, but such bit of a moment there with LMP2, I think that is, unfortunately losing his rear wing while dealing with LMDH. But yeah, like I said, with that last corner, it's just like that little kind of left and to the right. You've got such little time to actually commit into that corner, make a move up the inside. If you don't leave enough room, sometimes you can just clip the car that you're overtaking, and unfortunately that's enough to end their race.
Now this is a race where drivers have to do a pit stop, more just because the fuel capacity of the cars is limited to induce that. And so Nathan Zhu brings the Acura into pit lane. I mentioned field dominated by Acura. There's one Porsche, there's one Cadillac, and then everyone else is basically in that Acura. So it's interesting to see where those preferences have lined on up as we check back in with your race leader, Jaden Munoz, still hunting down Shane Larson as they head towards the faster of the LMP2 machines. And this is where they're going to have to be a bit more committed, especially knowing that downforce is going to be important in through this next complex. Larson gets past. I don't think Munoz is going to get past as easily.
It's so frustrating. In the position of Munoz, you can almost see Larson kind of getting the traffic in the good places, and Munoz, of course, picking up the traffic through the corners. It's always so frustrating when you're chasing someone down. You make the time back of what you've lost, and then you lose it all in 1 or 2 corners. But it swings and roundabouts, really. Shane will get a car that backs him up. Jaden will get a car that halts his progress. It's whoever can really deal with it the best. And I think a really important thing is keeping cool in the head. It's so easy to get over frustrated, and you'd be amazed how much that can really affect your driving. You just need to keep a cool head and make the right decisions. Close one there, using up all of that slipstream there in order to get back up to Shane. He's really giving it a go here, Munoz.
And again, you see that off the corner, the hybrid initially gives the LMDH, the GTP, a bit more acceleration, but then as you get further down, the hybrid cuts out. Then it's a bit more equal in terms of the power, and you kind of stall out and pulling on the side. You talk about needing to stay cool, calm, collected. One thing that, Gordy, I don't think a lot of people can appreciate, maybe you can spill a little bit more, having sat behind the wheel of the Praga in particular, these prototype cockpits, closed cockpit machines, they are tight, they are confining, and they are not comfortable.
No, no. Well, actually, they are very.
How tall are you?
I'm.
You're not
I'm
6'5", are you?
I'm not blessed with height.
Okay.
Height I'm not blessed with. But you know, like I say, that's good for a racing driver. It means a lower center of gravity. Okay, so actually, I don't want to be any taller than what I am.
It means you can fit
I'm
in your car
happy.
as well. I'm just pointing that
just
one
exactly,
out.
Yeah. But you know what? You know, in the prototypes, of course, you've got the tub, and you know, you've not got any seat. It's not like a GT car. You can't have a seat that just moves forwards and backwards. So you get a molding for your seats, and it perfectly fits the kind of shape of your body, and that means it's actually super comfortable. I mean, when you're waiting for a race to get going in Parc Fermé, it's quite warm. There's been a few times where, you know, my engineer from last year, Gav, has had to wake me up. It gets so cozy in those cars. There's a few people that don't really like the space, but I've never really minded it. But
Interesting.
yeah, but I'll tell you one thing though, it because it's such a confined space, the air conditioning really doesn't do too much.
Yeah, I can imagine that. For the record, Gordy, I am apparently too tall to even drive a Radical SR1, so...
Yeah. I think a few people were telling me that have met you in real life that they were actually very surprised about how tall you were.
Yeah, it's not good for a racing driver, I will say that. But this is going very off topic, but you've mentioned the molding, and now I have got to ask a question that I've always wondered. You get the molding done once at the start of the season as Munoz slips past another one of the LMP2 traffic, still yet to work past all of it as we're back into the GTDs as well. What happens over the course of a year when you go away for holiday, you eat maybe a little bit too much, and then you come back and you have to sit in the molding that was done 3 months ago?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a trickier one. I think, you know, that's the thing. It's a year-round thing where you have to maintain the fitness, constantly watch the food. So even when you're on holiday, you can't really enjoy it too much. So, you know, for next year, I'm definitely going to have to not eat too many of the pigs and blankets and stuff over Christmas. But yeah, it's like kind of a year-round thing. You don't want to be having too many seat inserts and whatnot because
it's expensive.
Yeah, expensive, and it's just simpler if you work with what you've got since the very start of the season, really. So, like, normally we'll keep a seat insert for the entire year. There's some people that like to change a little bit. The big one is, you know, if you've got junior drivers, the junior drivers, of course, like, you know, they're kind of in the stages where they're growing all of the time. So sometimes for the junior drivers, yeah, you need to kind of change the seat insert a little bit because, you know, out of anyone, they're growing the most throughout the year.
That's actually a very good point that I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah.
But yes, motorsports is an expensive sport at the best of times anyway, and so it's just another thing to add to the pile. Through the traffic again, if we pull up that chaos map and we drop the gaps at the front of the GTP field, you'll see that it has started to stretch out across all the classes. Now, part of that, unfortunately, is the level of attrition that we have somewhat seen. 11 GTD started, and only 6 of them are still running.
Yeah, it's always the GT3 that kind of gets the brunt of it, isn't it? But it's always so tricky. It's a bit of a game of survival, really. I always say, you know, when you're racing in the multi-class stuff and you're in the slowest car, you're driving more in your mirror than what you actually are at your front windscreen. It's so tricky to stay out of trouble. Because, you know, these LMDHs and LMP2s, they're, you know, no one's going to be your friend out there, and very few of them are going to, you know, be patient with you. At the end of the day, you know, we're in a race. Everyone's in a bit of a hurry, so very few people are taking their time. It just means incidents naturally just happen, really.
Yeah, and I think at some tracks, the Nordschleife springs to mind. Less traffic problems because we're probably not going to see traffic, and instead track problems will probably be a bit more of a reality. Pit stops, by the way, have been continuing for the LMP2s, and I think maybe the GTPs are getting ready to dive down to the lane as well. Indeed, Shane Larson from the lead has just peeled off in, but we have had a swap around for what is your net LMP2 lead, because Dan Nice, with a 15.1 second pit stop, has jumped in front of Casper Anderson, who cycled out of the pit lane after a 21 second pit stop, Gordy.
Very interesting. It's like what I said a few laps ago, how the LMP2 battle would be a bit more decided on strategy, and there we have it. So yeah, even in these 45-minute races, despite not being long, still need to play the long game. Always interesting. You always need to be planning ahead in these races. Always need to be thinking about fuel, because you know you need to take everything that can advantage you, and you know track position is king, really, especially around a fast circuit like this where it's hard to make a move.
And so, keeping that in mind, here's Shane Larson, who has come out of pit lane, but only 1.4 seconds in front of Nathan Dew in the number 5, who's been out on track for 7 laps. And so Jaden Munoz, I've just got the indication on my timing screen, is off and into pit lane. Undercut or overcut? We're about to find out.
Gonna be interesting here. I think I spotted as well. I think we had Shane potentially hopping over the grass just before coming into the pit lane. So I think Munoz closed up a fair bit just before Shane dived into the pits there. So I think this is going to be super tight. The thing is, Munoz wasn't really tucked right in behind him. I don't think he would have been saving too much fuel. So here we have it.
14.8 seconds. What? That is some witchcraft voodoo going on. 14.8 versus 22.4. Now, did Shane Larson and Nathan Dew do something wrong?
Not too sure there. I mean, like I said, I did see Shane having a little bit of a trip across the grass just before he entered the pit lane.
But if he got a penalty for an unsafe pit stop, a pit entry, excuse me, he would have been on pit lane for a lot longer. So yeah,
a lot longer. So either he is drastic. I tell you what he might have done. If it's 14 seconds, what he may have done is tires. Yeah, tires. So potentially a bit of an error there, because there's not really, I mean, I'd argue 20 minutes to go. I don't know these LMTH tires too well. I'd say 14 seconds, 20 minutes, new tires. I don't think new tires will do the job. So potentially a bit of a strategic or even a bit of a misclick, you know.
Could have been.
Maybe tried to turn the tires off. Maybe he forgot, but I think that's hurt Shane Larson quite a bit in terms of his hopes for getting the race win here, and it's put advantage to Munoz.
I don't think either it's something where, you know, you could say Jaden was saving fuel after being passed, because there are plenty of other drivers that did the 15-second pit stop, and there are plenty of drivers that have also done the 22, 24-second pit stop. So tires, I think, would clearly be somewhat of a factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think if he was able to underfuel him by 14 seconds, I think we should expect to see him pulling off to the side of the track in basically a lap or two.
Well, speaking of, Lee King McGee unfortunately has taken the tow back to pit lane. I'm going to put 2 and 2 together and say that something probably has gone wrong, either technically or on the run down into Moss Corner, for him to have pulled off there.
Lost the rear down the hill. So tricky, you know, when you have an elevation change. The car is so on the nose, especially down the hill. You know, you've got so much more rotation. It's a bit like Brainerd curves at Donington. You know, when you're going down the hill there, the car just gets so light, especially in the way. A bit of an incident there between an LMP2 and a GT3 there. Looks like they're having a little bit of an argument on the way down the hill. I want the track position, well, so do I, and then they met in the middle.
That was a little bit unfortunate, and it's just raining and pouring incidents right now. That's oh goodness! I'm very glad this race is virtual right now.
Well, that rocketed into the wall, didn't it? He went one way and then went the other. Just had a big snap. Looks like he got a bit of oversteer and then he's just overcorrected. Let's have a little look. Was there contact?
No.
No. He just went in. It's tricky because when you go in on the tighter line, you know, you're on the less grippy part of the circuit. You've got a sharper angle to the corner, and it just looks like he was trying to clear the car that was on his outside, and he's carried the same amount of speed into the corner as what he normally does on a tighter line. It just never really works. So, an unfortunate incident there, and it puts him out of the race.
That was pretty brutal, unfortunately. But it's the old school nature of Mosport. And we've had not just one like that. There was the other one over Moss Corner, right, where the car basically hopped and tried to fly for a little bit before it ran into the wall.
Yeah, we did. I'd say, I think, same spot as, exact same spot. Like that downhill left-hander is proven to be very, very tricky for these GT3 cars. Of course, with these GT3 cars, it's a lot harder for these cars down that hill. They haven't got the benefit of the big rear wings that these LMP2 and LMDH cars have. The car would just be moving around down that corner. You know, the GT3s are predominantly, you know, souped up road cars, so they don't have a massive benefit.
You say that, but
yeah.
Compare now modern GT3s to 15 years ago when the classification was still relatively new. These cars are a lot more aerodynamic and aero-dependent than they were before. And in some ways, we're watching two Ferraris at the front of the field battle right now for second and third positions as Mason Smith runs a bit wide out of Moss Corner, just trying to get a bit of a better run with traffic. This is a car which feels more like a prototype in some ways, given that you can detach the rear end and put it back on in about 3 minutes time. Yeah,
it's interesting. So of course, I've chatted to a few drivers that have been piloting this new Ferrari, and their feedback was that compared to other GT3s that they've driven, it feels more like an LMP3 car.
Interesting.
Yeah. So of course, I think it's Dallara that have actually made the chassis.
Yes.
For this new Ferrari, and of course, they are predominantly a manufacturer for prototype cars and single seaters. So, I think the newer generation of GT3 cars are becoming different beasts, and yeah, they're straying more and more away from their road car counterparts, and they're just getting quicker and quicker and quicker and more advanced. A lot of people have said that the new Ferrari kind of is the ultimate package in terms of the GT3 car, especially from a mechanics perspective.
Right.
The mechanics absolutely love these cars because it's so easy to work on them. If they need to change something, they just whip off the rear end with 2 clicks of the spanner, and they have access to everything. The mechanics, the drivers love it. The mechanics love the new Ferrari even more.
It's a really interesting way of putting it as well, because in the sim we're spoiled, right? You click a few buttons and bish bash bosh, your setups already applied to the car. It's not as simple sometimes to change camber in the real world, just as an example, and so keep that in mind. I saw Tyson Meyer was down to pit lane. Ozareskov Sky has gone as well for the GTDs, but this is a 4-way fight for 9th position in the GTPs. It is all Acuras, yes, but Yanni Stefanidis is the one leading the train in the Hydro-Race geodesic colors. The fiercely forward liveried machine of Matthias Wittgen is directly behind, and they've had a couple of nervy moments through the traffic already. Fortunately, a bit more clean air to enjoy for the time being.
Yeah, but I think all of these guys in their black box will be looking at that timer. There's 14 minutes on the clock. There is less and less time to make something work. Less and less time. Looks like Matthias really, really wants to get a move on. He knows that with the traffic, he's at a little bit of a trickier position. Yanni is in the best position right now. I like that helmet as well with the skull.
It's not bad.
Yeah, so Yanni is in the best position when it comes to traffic, but he's under pressure. Matthias is looking for the inside into quick corner.
It's the
Wow,
flick to the
Matthias
right
makes it work,
and
yeah.
straight on through. And now they'll get past Mason Smith as well, who's heading off down to the pit lane. So the GTD net leader has just come on in, and just in the nick of time, because those were an angry swarm of 4 that have now filtered their way on through out of turn 1. Still, I think this battle is not done and dusted just yet. This is the open setup IMSA iRacing series, where they do have the ability to dial in their cars just a little bit. There is a fixed setup counterpart as well if you would like to have a setup provided to you. They're not bad setups, all things considered. They just might not be as dialed in to get the most from the car. And I think we're going to now have to watch the merge on pit exit here, because Jaden Munoz has been caught, A, by Shane Larson, but also by Jari Lehtinen, who's just come out of pit lane. Where's Thomas Gibson going to insert himself into the mix, Gordy?
Let's have a little look. Munoz comes through turn 1. Can't see where he's at. Oh, he's a little bit behind. He's got a bit of time to make up. He's got 12 minutes to make something work. Traffic always comes into play. Looks like Lehtinen is on the move though. Slowly creeping up on Munoz. It only takes one bad bit of traffic for him to be right on him. The game is still on. Just like that, for example. Munoz getting a little bit held up there, and it brings Lehtinen ever so closer. It gives him that extra motivation to push that little bit more. You can see the time ticking down. He knows that he's not got a lot of time to make this work. It is full push till the end now.
If you're curious for LMP2, by the way, Wayne Borker's just taken the lead, and it is all strategy because it's a 3 second shorter pit stop than Dan Neeson. He's now got a 3.5 second advantage, but looking rearwards, charged up as the Williams Esports driver with that Duracell battery on top that always makes me smile. The placement of the sponsor stuff always on point when it comes to WAN and iLiveries. Traffic, though, in the form of the LMP2 class is going to build up the advantage. Shane Larson tries to go the long way around in turn 2, and he's on the grass, but Gordy's held on to it. He's down to 4th.
That's frustrating from Shane. You know, he'd done a great job to kind of make back a bit of time from that pit stop, and just like that, you know, such a small error. You know, you have to be so inch perfect in these races, and a centimetre too wide can what change the race. The track just drops away there. The car pushes on, and yeah, ended up a little bit wider than what he would have wanted to be. Unfortunately, loses the position out of it.
It's also a track where I think in the sim world, as a lot of drivers, you know, develop their racecraft in open wheel and prototype machines, don't think about a lot of the things that a track with undulation and elevation presents. I'm not necessarily saying that corner is one to think about, but I was at the Atlanta Motorsports Park with some sim drivers getting their very first experience of a real car, and one of the things that one of the coaches was telling them, Gordy, is so as you come over the crest of one of these hills, and this was a steep crest as well, like talking a proper climb, you're going to now have wind that's suddenly hitting the underside of the car. It's going to change the aero balance. And so little things like this are things that you may on a sim feel like, oh, you understand, but until you're actually out there, you don't really understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, same kind of thing. You'd be amazed how much the pedal input will actually change the balance of the car, especially when there's an elevation changer going downhill. I was at Donaldson Park the other day doing some driver coaching, and the driver was just struggling with craners, just kept on having a snap at the top of the hill, and he kept on backing off more and more, and the snaps were becoming bigger and bigger. He couldn't really wrap his head around it, and essentially because he was fully lifting out of the power and doing it too aggressively, he was just causing that car to have a bit too much rotation. Instead, you know, I kind of drilled into his head that if he actually kept the power on through the corner and kept a bit more, you know, kind of height in the front end, pushed the throttle through the corner to induce a little bit of understeer, it'd actually make the car a lot more balanced. And lo and behold, he took a deep breath. He said momentarily that he just closed his eyes and kept the throttle on, which, full respect down craners if he actually did that. But when he kept the throttle on, boom, you know, the snap stopped happening. So, you know, it's really interesting. Sometimes all you need to do is just a tiny bit more power, tiny bit less power, a little bit of brake. You know, these things add up so much towards the car's balance, and you know, I think that's what makes it really, really impressive. You know, looking at the technique of the top guys in sim racing, their technique is so elegant, and it's so in line with you know, what I'd expect to see in real life. And I think with how advanced simulators are nowadays, I think that's why we're seeing people like, you know, Lucas Blakely, and you know, even Jimmy, when I looked after him, you know, they can get into a real car and you know, be fast once they learn to transfer the skills.
I think at this point as well, Jimmy has gone to the point where you can no longer classify him as just like a sim racer. You can't classify him really as like a hobbyist in the world of motorsports. He's a proper professional racing driver at this point. So yeah, I think that is definitely something to keep in mind, and it's cool to see some of the ways that they adapt as well, even no matter what age they get into a car for the first time. Daniel Morad just put 16 sim races into his Mercedes GT4 for a day, and that was quite cool as well. Ike Haglar passed Gabriel Roos, who started up in, what was it, second spot, but now down to 5th position. He's not had as bad a run as some others have had rather. It's been a race of attrition for sure, and Mason Smith was fighting for second. Not anymore.
Yeah, that looks like a bit of an unhealthy car. It looks like it was crabbing before he got to the corner. I think he had already some suspension damage by the time he arrived to that corner.
Oh yeah, look at the steering.
Yeah, look at the steering wheels. So I think he was pretty much already doomed by the time he reached that.
Oh, there it was. You can see the steering brake, and that's traffic once again through that final complex.
Yeah, it's just so tricky. It's that corner again. Like we said earlier, just, you know, it's a nice opportunity at that last corner to get up the inside for these LMDHs, but if you don't, you know, give enough room to the car that you're overtaking, most of the time you'll be alright, maybe a little bit of damage, but it really does affect the car that you're overtaking, and more likely or not you're going to be putting them into the wall or give them a bit of damage, which is exactly what we saw there. So unfortunate, tricky. I think the LMDH just misjudged that a bit.
It is the responsibility at the end of the day of the passing car to pass safely, but at this level of both real motorsport and sim racing, you don't always have the expectation that the car is just going to run its line. Some GT machines will run defensive lines just to cover things off and indicate to the driver behind that you can get it on exit. It's the body language, the dance between the two classes that really is always interesting to watch. And well, there's nothing going on except pure aggression here. 6 minutes means what? Maybe 6 laps at most for these drivers really to go, as they all fight for a final spot inside of the top 10.
Yeah, very, very close here. Tim Gray leading the pack here. Look at Yanni Stefanidis. He's lost a little bit of ground in this pack. Not too sure if he's struggling with tyres. Maybe he's picked up a bit of damage in the race, but just seems to be losing a bit of ground. But he's still in the battle here. He's still in the picture. 5 minutes left on the clock. If you're going to make a move, you need to make it now.
You need the hybrid charge as well, so if you left yourself in a bit of a hole with the battery, now's the time to quickly bump it into recharge and try and spool it up at the end. But already Philip Spencer's alongside of Tim Gray on corner exit, as down the back straightaway they'll go, as a jink to the inside as Yanni Stefanidis tries to cover off Thomas Gallo as well. Stefanidis passes Gray, Gray loses out. 3 positions in the space of 1 straight. Such was the importance of the exit out of turn 5.
Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking for Tim Gray. I'm sure he'll be very, very, very frustrated with that. 1 straight, he's leading the pack, and out of the next corner, he's at the back of the queue. He's given himself all of the work to do in the last 4 minutes here. I think Philip Spencer's got a bit of clear space in front of him. He seems to be making a little bit of a break for it. You know, he's done the job. He's passed them. He's out. I'm gone, guys. He's waving goodbye.
I kind of wonder as well, has he just got a clean car? Has he stayed out of trouble? And these I almost spoke too soon, because Thomas Darabaz spins in front of them and somehow they all are able to get on through.
Good job by the Porsche. That's what you're meant to do. If you have a spin, you hope to brake. So that Porsche done the correct thing there. He had a spin. He was about to roll backwards onto the track, but he didn't. He held the brake and didn't ruin anyone else's race. So, there's an incident in the LMDH there.
Turns out you don't need a GTD to ruin your race. Unfortunately for Thomas Gallo, he loses out and will drop to 12th position and surely out of touch in the closing stages of those in front. Let's go back in time, though, and quickly grab some replays of well, what happened to the Porsche initially, because I'm quite curious. Is it a repeat of what we've already seen before?
Let's have a little look. It's a little bit further on. Put it through. It's just that uphill as soon as he comes over the crest. The car just lightens up and he over-rotates the car, and yeah, unfortunately it's a really tricky one. Like I said at the very start of the broadcast, that corner is just so tricky. Moss corner is so tricky. Down the edge, yeah, it's just got a bit too close to the rear end of the car, lightly brushed it, took off the load off of the front, and the rear end came round on him. And
fortunately, no damage, albeit maybe damage to the ego, with just 3 minutes left to go in this one. Jaden Munoz is out of that turn 5 section once again and working his way back to the line. Gordy, how much iRating do you have?
Oh, well, I'm quite low in comparison to today's standards. I think I'm in the region of 8.6, I think, which is like everyone's.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not wow. It was good. It was good like a year, 2 years ago. It's not very good now. I'm on the lower range now.
Yeah, Jaden Munoz has 10,019 iRatings. Wow. I don't think he needs that many, to be perfectly frank.
No. Well, you can give some to me.
And me, please. I'm 4,500. I'll take a few of them. He's got 2 laps to go, maybe 3. Oh, it might be 3 laps, depending on how fast he can get through the next 2 laps with traffic. But I mean, this is kind of what you were mentioning earlier, right? Just stay out of trouble with traffic, keep your nose clean. And even though Jaden hasn't led every lap, he put it on pole, has maybe been the fastest car at times. He's just stayed out of trouble.
Yeah, I think that's what it's all about, you know. Especially, you know, when working your way through traffic, it's very much about damage limitation. The thing is, you know, between all the top guys, they're so close on pace that if you do pick up a little bit of damage, even if it's a 1/10 and a half, 2/10 a lap, to people that, you know, don't really know motorsports that much, watching and thinking like a 1/10, 2/10 of a second, that's absolutely nothing. How can a 1/10 a lap affect your race? In racing, it does massively. When people are so close at the top end of the sport, that 1/10, 2/10 makes a massive difference, and that's enough to, you know, put you down from leading the race down to P4.
There are apparently now 30 drivers with more than 10,000 iRating on the road side of things. I remember when we barely had 2. That's crazy, the amount of iRating inflation we've had, and on the closing laps of the race, 2 LMP2 cars. Well, there's no fixing those. Those are wrecked chassis going straight back to Dallara.
Yeah, they were so close to the end. So close to the end. Yeah, looks like a battle of who wanted to get their elbows out the most down the hill, was it? Oh, no! They got checked up by the Porsche in front. They first LMP2 arrived to the back of it. Noticed there was no way through, slammed on the brakes. LMP2 car behind had nowhere to go.
You're kidding me! Oh my goodness! The clock strikes 0 and we reach the final lap of the race, and Gordy, Jere Lettinen and Thomas Gibson are straight down to pit lane with not enough fuel to get to the end.
Oh wow. That might change the results a little bit. Look at that. I think that's the fastest pit stop ever. I think they stopped and just dropped the clutch and they were away again with that splash and dash. Yeah, it's a slight miscalculation. Well, Munoz is the man that has played it right then, taking on that extra lap of fuel, securing himself the race win. It's going to be interesting to see if this will shake up the order here. Look at the timing screens. I think we may still have Larson in P2. I think Nathan Dew is potentially up to P3 now.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else is going to be out of... Shane Larson is slowing down, and Nathan Jew's going to grab second. Oh, my word. One extra lap that I think plenty didn't account for. It's Jaden Munoz that is able to extend and take his Williams Esports Razor car to victory in the first round of the IMSA iRacing Series of 2024 Season 1. It is indeed Nathan Jew by 1/10 of a second in front of Shane Larson. And Wayne Borker's already crossed the line to grab the victory in your LMP2 class. He's also just rolled to a stop because I think plenty of drivers in other classes may have been mixed up in it as well. Tyson Meyer probably not so worried though as he rolls his way around into the final sector. He's already had 1,219 wins in his iRacing career, Gordy. This is win 1,220.
Yeah. I didn't think that we'd be seeing Tyson back into P1 after his earlier dramas in the race. But yeah, he comes back through to win. I think a race of attrition really in the GT3s. I don't think many GT3s saw the checkered flag, so I'm sure Tyson will be very, very, very happy to see it.
Yeah, let's. The race results, I think, are going to tell the story when we get to the GTD classes. The final of the contenders will work their way across the line. If we've got this sort of action for the rest of the season, boy, is it going to be fun. But we're going to probably have to get our fuel calculators out sooner rather than later. It's a field dominated by Acuras, but it's that one extra lap that Jaden Munoz accounted for that sees him build up a 7.5 second advantage over those behind Nathan Jew, Shane Larson, and Andrea Cassone. Valentin Boney, Jere Letton, and Thomas Gibson through the top 7. Those final 2 drivers needing to dive to pit lane for what was a splash and dash 3 seconds, their total pit stop time. Matthias Wittgen behind them with Philip Spencer, Thomas Gallo, the rest of your top 10, with Tim Gray and then Brian Greener, the sole Cadillac in the field. Yanni Stefanidis 1 lap down. Julian Reti, we saw him have a humongous incident in his Acura. Carter Hutchison, the Porsche, not getting beyond 10 laps into this one, while the final driver, Jonathan Scouthaug, in 16th position, rounding out the GTP class. In the LMP2s, we didn't really get to talk about them too much, but it was all about strategy. Wayne Bork came from 5th to 1st, with Dan Neese 2nd, and only just in front of Casper Anderson by 0.3 of a second at the end of the race. Ali Kaglar, Gabriel Roos, Sylvain Moraine, Martin de Jong, and then Simon Berg, the first car, 1 lap down, albeit 4 laps down, and Adam Chipalewski not finishing along with him. Lionel Mazet, 10 laps down for him, and then in the slightly abbreviated Spec Lara class, Jason Anderson, Ryan Livingston round out the rest of the field. Last but not least, it's over to the GTDs where, like I said, I think the results are going to tell the story. Tyson Meyer 15 seconds clear of Love 46, Lubiev Otarevskov-Skaya, and then Taurus Darbaz. We saw his Porsche spin around in Moss Corner in the closing stages. He still finished on the podium 1 lap down, but then everyone else 9 laps down for Mason Smith, Jack Thompson, Philip Berra as well, Lee King McGee, Lemmy Meshki, Salvatore De Pompo, and then Matt Solacek through the top 10 as the carousel of RaceSpot names continues. Ryan Callan at the very back of the 39 strong car field in what was a pretty intriguing race, all things considered. It would usually be at this time that we would hope to talk to some of the drivers. Don't think we're going to get that opportunity today, and so we look forward. In a week's time, we'll return, but while IMSA's all about North America, Gordy, we get to take this show on the road, and we're heading to the Hockenheim ring where A, there's less elevation, but B, there's some heavier braking zones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we all know that hairpin is the designated area for lap 1 heroes, and big dives up the inside. So I think Hockenheimring, we're going to see more overtaking going on. Like you said, heavier braking zones, which of course will encourage a bit more racing going on. A lot more space as well, longer track, so I don't think we should see as much chaos when it comes to traffic. Should have a bit more space to work with. So it should be a very, very interesting race. It's a technical track, Hockenheimring. You know, it's a lot of time can be gained and lost out of technique, so it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that one pans out.
Yeah, it's definitely changed over the years. It does not retain its old school nature as Canadian Tire Motorsports has Parker's done, but it is definitely still a track in that sort of a vein. Here's a look at the schedule because, of course, just one more race in the year. After that, it will be a trip over down to blast through the Mulsanne and around the Circuit de la South. Long Beach to welcome us into 2024, and then Watkins Glen, Daytona. Those are two more classic American tracks before we head into the back half of the season by heading to the Nordschleife. Yes, it's going to be fun. For now, though, it's time to bid you farewell. The IMSA iRacing Series never disappoints, and 39 cars survived for 45 minutes around the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, albeit in various different states of disarray. We'll be back in a week's time, just 2 more rounds left to go in 2023, and we'll look forward to more great multi-class racing. Courtney Much alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, talking you through all of the action. Thank you so much for joining us for Friday Night Primetime, and we'll see you next week to continue running our way through some great iRacing official racing.